Mina, how are you? And we're going to talk about the Georgian era. Georgian era.
Georgian, George,
Georgian. It's not the
like
Georgian.
Georgie Porgy. Yeah,
Georgian era.
George.
Why Georgian era? First of all, before we even ask any questions,
What about it?
why is it Jordan after George?
Georgian, because there was King George.
Why would you call him the Gregorian era? That's something different.
Yeah, no, he wasn't gory. He was Georgie.
So
George the second. George.
Georgian. So it's very hard. You could think it's Georgian. No.
No, there's no D there. There's no.
What about if you're from Georgia? It's Georgian, right?
Yeah,
Georgia, Georgian. Well, what's different?
Georgian,
I'm
Georgian.
getting it.
Uh, because George the second, he went Looney Tunes.
Kind of like George Soros.
Yeah.
All right.
We don't want to go there. And so then his son took over the job, but King the second was still alive, so they called him the Regent, King Regent. So that's why we come up with the Regency era because of the time George the second's son was running the show.
Okay.
Capiche?
I guess. Ha! So, what made you fall in love with Georgian era and choose it
Oh,
as the backdrop for your romances?
well, first of all, we've talked about this before. I was really interested in that in England and Scotland because that's my lineage. And I when I when I left my dean's position, I was very bored, very super bored. So I started reading, and I got into these romance novels, and um, I got very interested. So I started doing research, and I think that the reason why I like writing the stories in that era is because it's such an idealized romance era. The 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 courtship was very structured. Um, you had to have somebody with you. You couldn't. There was no hand holding. They read the banns. It's what they call it, BANNS, and um, for 3 weeks in the church that you were going to get married in, they would
Hmm.
read that you were going to get married. And the reason for that was if there was someone that said, no, she was supposed to marry me, then that was the reason for reading banns. Um, so the only other option for them would be to go to Gretna Green and get married over the anvil, is what they called it.
Okay.
But anyway, it was an idealized era. The people back then, they wrote letters. They exchanged little gifts. They gave each other books. Women made watch chains out of their hair, which sounds a little icky now, but I mean it was a simpler time,
Hmm.
and we all would like to see that in our lives, right?
Uh, yes.
and
No AI in the Georgian era.
and then the other thing was the architecture back then was
Mhm.
just everything was symmetrical, the high ceilings, the artwork, the the woodwork. It was all so beautiful.
It
Just
sounds like it.
it was so beautiful. And then the books, people were just getting to where there was a lot more access to books, and so they started writing the romance novels started becoming very popular back then.
How do the dramatic social changes of the Jajorian period
Orgy,
shape your characters?
orgy in era.
Jajorian. I don't know why I think it's Georgian because am I seeing an extra syllable?
Yeah, you are. It's Georgian, not Georgian. It sounds like you're trying to rev an engine or something. Georgian.
Go ahead.
Okay, so about that time was just the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and you were starting to see where people were leaving the agrarian uh, economy into the industrial economy. So people were leaving the farms. Um, and I write about that in one of my books, I think, in book 3, I write about um, the horsemen buy homes, really nice estates in Surrey because the previous owners were not able to keep their tenants. They were all moving into London to get jobs, better paying jobs. And so they were able to buy these homes for cheap. So I write about that in book 3. Um, there was another thing that was going on was the emergence of the middle class or the merchant class. And I write about that because wealthy merchants were just beginning to be accepted into society by the aristocracy. They didn't really like them, but if they had tons of money, then they were going to be recognized. And the aristocracy was starting to have problems themselves because they sat on their fat laurels for so many decades or whatever, uh, because they were living off the land physically, technically, that when people started leaving, then they were losing their resources, and so they were gambling. A lot of them gambled away their money. A lot of them lost their money because they didn't know how to manage their tenant farms. So they were having to accept that bourgeois, although they didn't really want to. And then the other thing is the shipment of goods. There was a whole new world opened up to bring in shipments of all different kinds of things: textiles, spices, liquors from China, from India, from the all parts of the Orient, and so the merchant class and the upper aristocracy that took advantage of that were able to really build their wealth off of shipping. What else? Um, uh, Marriage, the societal constraints around marriage stayed the same. A lot of these other things were changing a lot, but that was changing. There was a lot of poverty because these people were moving into the city, but there wasn't enough work, or they had romanticized the fact that they were going to come into town, what they call London town. They were going to come into town and make all this money, and they didn't. They were living in these shacks, and the number one cause of death was consumption. What they call consumption, it was pulmonary tuberculosis, and that was the number one cause of death. Children. I think 30% of children died before their first birthday. 43% of children died before they were 6 years old. So, I mean, I don't write too much about that as much as I do write in book 3, I write about the Red Cliff Fire and all these poor people that are burned out of their little shacks. So there's a lot that I wrote my story around that fire, which is it's a
Mhm.
true story.
What are
Terrible.
the toughest challenges you face when creating believable Georgian era romances?
Uh, well, first you need to ask me about little known facts.
I skipped that one because we already kind of talked about it already.
No, but they'll have really good stuff already.
Okay. Okay, then give it to me then.
Okay. One thing that I didn't know about, this is really disgusting, is women had these really ornate hairdos. They would put uh, ribbons and pearls and all kinds of jewelry in their hair, but the designs were very ornate, and they used pig fat, pig fat to hold the design. Um, and they in my books and in a lot of the books that I've read um, in this Georgian era or the Regency era, whichever, um, these people bathe. In the books, we have them bathe. But women that had their hair done like that, they may not wash their hair for a month. For a month. Can you imagine how that smelled with pig fat? And uh, what else? Oh, it's just they didn't bathe. And you think about, um, and I have noticed in other books that they don't write a whole lot about them using the facilities. And there's a reason for that. It's because it was nasty. Either they did it in a chamber pot and they put it under their bed. Can you imagine how that smelled? I
Come
know.
on, you gotta love pig fat.
Oh, can you imagine pig fat in your hair? Um, and then what else? Oh yeah, I've already told you about the causes of death. And the other thing that I think is interesting, and I wish I'd had some pictures to show you because they were so fascinating. And if anybody out there is interested, the caricatures that some of the newspapers had their artists, they would draw caricatures of the political figures of the time or even social figures. And it was their way of showing you kind of what they looked like, even though they were exaggerated, um, and and B, sharing the story about what had happened. The gossip was really, of course, gossip's bad any time of during any time era in time, but when you have an isolated number of aristocracy, just the slightest little indiscretion was always going to be amplified and drawn about and talked about, and people were ostracized for that. Okay, so now you can ask me the other question.
What are the toughest challenges you face when creating believable Georgian era romances?
There's always a challenge between trying to make the story believable for that time period and keeping your story. You can't you you need to have just enough of the voice back then without if I use I read a book, and I think I mentioned this before. I read a book not too long ago, and the author put in there that the dialogue in the dialogue, the man said full stop. Full stop. He didn't say full stop. That's just a fairly new um, uh, idiom. in the English language is full stop. And they're saying that they said that in 1794. No, they didn't say that then. They said shite, and they said what the deuce, and um, they said they didn't say anything like that. Their cuss words were pretty much the same. The really good ones that we have, the really spicy ones, we still have those. But you have to make sure that you're not writing in such a way that the people that read those historical romance novels are going, no, and just close the book and go, this isn't right. So there's a fine balance between trying to tell the story and keeping enough of the history true to make it believable. Does that make
Mhm.
any sense?
All right, next one. How do you strike that right balance between historical accuracy and storytelling freedom when writing your books?
Well, that's kind of what we talked about, but what we just talked about. But the one thing is important is that you have to do the research. You have to do the research. You have to make sure that your characters are believable for that era, and that takes a lot of research. You can't your female lead cannot be walking around in short skirts or um, if they're a member of the aristocracy, they're going to have servants, and you have to know how they interacted with servants. I think a lot of authors today, and I am at fault with it as well, but there wasn't that casualness between the servant and the owner like we can read about. Um, I think, and there was a lot more turnover of help than we read
Yeah.
about. In my books, the butlers and the cooks usually stay forever, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but that's the way I do them in my books.
Have any real historical figures from the Georgian era directly influenced characters in your stories?
Oh
If
yeah,
so, who and how?
oh yes. Now my these books haven't come out yet, but well, uh, in book three, George the Regent, he's written about because they call upon him for some favors. And one of the characters in book three, the Marquis makes his move. Stevie's father has known the regent for many years before he became regent. So they kind of partied together and all that. So now, when he becomes a regent, Stevie's father needs a favor, so he goes to see him. And most typically, that would not necessarily happen. That the regent would see somebody right away, but he would see an old friend. So there is in the book, and then in the books to come out, um, I have one of the books is about an actor uh, that was a real actor back in that time, and he is integral to part of that story. And then the Battle of Waterloo. Um, there's a couple of real life. Well, there's several real life soldiers that are woven into that story. It's a really good story. I can't wait for that one to come out.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Can you walk us through historical research process and mention any go-to sources or favorite references you rely on?
Oh my gosh, I should take you up to my library.
We've seen your library, but the podcast is not.
No, the podcast is not. So maybe next week I'll move the podcast upstairs so that everybody can see my library.
You
Uh,
like throwing books on the floor, right?
uh,
Like in the Georgian era, right?
there's just so many. There's just so many. I can't really refer to one in particular, but um, if I want to talk about a dress, then I'm going to pull the books that I bought on the dresses from that era, and I might pick out a design, and then I know the type of fabrics that they had back then, and so I can incorporate that from the books that I have. If I want to talk about a particular dinner, I have books on the food, the types of food people ate back then. I even have books on um, complete dinners, how they would set them up, and what courses they would have. Ugh, and some of them are just tongue. Mm. I mean, I'm not. Hey, each shoe's own. If somebody out there that really likes tongue, I'm so happy for you. I, of course, I eat escargot, and I know a lot of people that just go, "Ew, no, escargot, that's gross." Well, I love it.
All right.
But there's just tons. You have to make sure what you're writing about is true. The housing's got to be right. The streets have got to be right. The carriages have to be right. The horses have to be right. If you can make up a bookstore if you want to. I don't. There are bookstores that I like the names of them, and there were horse auctions that they had. Tattersall's. It was a real place, and I think Tattersall's is still around today. But there's a nice, there has to be a nice chemistry between your fantasy and the reality of the time.
All right. Best place people go is minavalentine.com. Some really intriguing information. Now I will never mess up Georgian era again, not Georgian or Jajorian. Well, maybe because I thought of Gregorian chant, Jajorian chant.
No, no, no.
There's no such thing as a Jajorian chant.
No, I don't think so.
I just made it up myself. And now
Yeah.
probably somebody's name is going to be Jajorian.
Or DeLorean.
All right.
Oh,
Take care now.
I did a modeling thing on a DeLorean.
Do you have a
Yep.
picture of that?
I think the photographer that sold the picture, I don't think I ever got that back. You know, a lot of times when you model for something, you don't get the picture.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thanks again. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show.
Oh,
And
wait, one more thing.
Mhm.
Anybody that is interested in coming on to the Mina Valentine podcast, 4:30 on Fridays, it's rebroadcast on Instagram and YouTube. Please contact us. We want you to be on.
All right.